Raise your hand if you ever heard from me before. Yeah, that's about right. So here's the thing. My name's Greg. I'm a local author, speaker, filmmaker. I grew up in a mean street of a place called Del Mar, California. I don't know if you've heard of it or not. I was in a street gang called the Del Mar Posse. At night, we break into BMWs and we detail them. We're a real tough group, right? And I've been now published in, I think, 58 books. I've been, 40 languages, 35 different countries. I've been in 5 motion pictures, and no one's ever heard of me, so don't feel bad. But when I first started in the industry, I had this great mentor. His name was Charlie Tremendous Jones. And he had this quote. He says, "You are the same today as you'll be in 5 years, except for just 2 things. The people you meet and the books you read. It's who you hang out with. It's what you put in your head that determines your character as a person." So in high school, if you hung around the smoking section, who were you? Right, if you hung around the jocks, you're a jock. Same thing applies today. If you hang around people that complain, gripe, and moan, you know some of those people? Well, that becomes our conversation. If we hang around some people that are positive solution searching, then that too becomes our dialogue. And through the time we're going to have together, I'm going to share a lot of cool people that I've met along my journey, but also some of the products, some of the things you should have in your own success library. It begins with this one. I call it a bathroom book because you can read it in one sitting. Look at that little sucker, right? It's called Bradford, You're Fired. And the story is about this guy named Bradford who complains, gripes, and moans that everything goes wrong is someone else's fault. And one day he walks by a full-length mirror and catches a glimpse of himself. He looks in the mirror and realizes it's his own doing, and he goes, "Bradford, you're fired." And right there starts taking accountability and responsibility for his own life and actions. And the moral is how many times we look at other outside influences to dictate where we can be. Now this one here, well, she already knows the program here. Now this one here is called Acres of Diamonds. This is a great story. Has anyone ever heard this before? It's a story about this young whippersnapper who wants fortune and fame. And he's got this ranch back at home, and nothing would grow in the fields. In fact, every time he plants something, nothing would pop up. So in the middle of the night, he tricks someone to buy his estate for pennies on the dollar. He goes out on this quest to get rich, but nothing goes his direction. So much so, he commits suicide. It's a real uplifting read, right? But here's the moral of the story. The guy back home's ticked off because he bought this farm in the middle of the night, and sure enough, every time he planted something, these stupid white shining rocks kept popping up. Realizing there was acres of diamonds in his own backyard. How many times we get something that's called the bad case of the once I? That means I'm going to take action once I get the kids out of the house, once I get the big break. And the best time to take action is the moment, the second, that we realize we have a dream in our head. Charlie Tremendous did this little audio program. It's a CD called Succeeding with What You Have. Understand this, 80% of every single thing we need is already within your sphere of influence. Of course, the person in the furthest direction raised their hand first. Very nice job. And so I'm going to say it again. How many times have you gone to one of these networking events and you actually met someone who's cool and you put them in their cell phone or you got their business card and you're waiting for that perfect time to reach out? Or we're afraid to because they're too successful or whatever story we want to tell ourselves. But we also realize that 80% of everything we need is already within our sphere. All we have to do is have the courage to start reaching out, and that's where the miracle starts. By the way, this is one of my first books I ever did. It's called Positive Impact. Now, when you write a book, let me tell you the way it works. You create something that's called a query letter. It says who you are, what's your message, why are you an expert, and who's going to read your book. Well, what happened is, I got a D in English. I remember I went to school in Del Mar, right? I'm just a regular guy. And all of a sudden, I decided I was going to become his best-selling author. So I sent 8 of these query letters out every week. Every week, I'd go back to the mailbox, and there'd be 8 return envelopes. I was turned down by 268 publishers in a row. The 269th publisher said, "We'll do your book. All you got to do is change the title, the beginning, the middle, and the end part." I figured they knew more than me, so I took their counsel, and I'm glad I did. And I wrote this first book. It's called Positive Impact. Here, your hands up so you can have this one back here. And the whole idea is this. When I met with somebody, I wanted to be a positive motivational speaker, and I said, well, who's the very best? And I realized for success is to surround yourself with people who are already doing what you want to do, right? If you want to be a realtor, find out who's selling the most houses. If you want to sell cars, who's doing the same thing? So I went to this guy named Les Brown. Now, Les Brown is an amazing motivational speaker, and I said, Les, I want to be great like you. What should I do? He goes, that's easy. Just do something great. Right? So I'm the first motivational speaker in the history of the world auctioned off on eBay. I put myself up for sale, and I was won by this company called Spring Air Mattress Corporation. You probably heard of them before, right? They flew me out to Salt Lake City, and I did my little dog and pony, but they put me up in this hotel. It's called the Grand America. And if you ever go to Salt Lake City, it's amazing. It's a castle. It's beautiful. It's got wood inlay floors and marble, and it's crystal chandeliers. And every Sunday, they do something called high tea, where they have tea and crumpets, and you put your pinky out and everything. And there's this old man in the lobby. People are going up and kneeling down, holding his hand like he's the Pope or something. I go, who's this knuckle job? They go, that's Earl Holding. I go, what's Earl Holding? He goes, well, he owns this hotel and the entire franchise called Little America throughout the Midwest. I go, I got to have a meeting with old Earl. About an hour goes by. I go, Mr. Holding, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. I learned so much. Young man, in 1 hour, you know more about me than my own children do. So with all due respect, Mr. Holding, because everyone wants something from you. I don't want a thing. I just want to know how you did it. Maybe I could do it too. Well, just because you said that, I'll teach you how I made my first $1 billion. So I sat back down. He said, the secret of success is luck and action. I go, what do you mean? He goes, luck and action. He said, as a young man, he wanted to get into the oil business, so he bought a used oil rig. He put it in the ground, and it struck oil the first time. Never been done in the history of the world. He goes, but I got lucky because I took action. And he says, where could you be if you're outside and you start taking action with your own ideas? He says, I took that money from the first oil rig and I bought another one. And then I bought another one. He goes, today I own a little company you might have heard of called Sinclair Oil Corporation, the little dinosaur logo. I go, holy smokes. I go, I'm going to get lucky too. I'm going to take some action. I go, thank you, Mr. Holding. I got up to leave and I started walking away. He goes, where are you going? I haven't told you how I made any money yet. And he said the greatest line by Zig Ziglar. He said, to get what you want, help others get what they want first. He said between Wyoming and Utah, the freeway system was horrible. He said there was all kinds of damage because of the weather, and no one wanted to do all the repairs. He says he buys himself a brand new Cadillac. He says it's a real bumpy ride. I go, what'd you do? I bought the freeway. I go, what? He goes, I bought the freeway. He says, I took all my oil money and I paid both sides so no one could argue, and I had a nice ride from my Cadillac. So, okay, whatever. I'm sure there's a moral to that story, right? I go, thank you very much for my time. I turned away, started walking, and I hear this man. He's like 92 years old. He just had a stroke, and he's laughing at me. I stop. I turn around. I go, excuse me? He goes, boy, you're missing the whole point. He says, whose hotels and gas stations do you think I put along my own freeway? And he said to become a millionaire, to become a billionaire, you just got to think like one. So right now, in 2 minutes, I'm going to teach you how to think like a multi-millionaire if you're game. Do you guys got game for this? Okay, for the sake of argument, let's all agree I'm going to give you $1,000 in cash. Do you agree? Do you agree? Okay, for the sake of argument, we're going to agree that we want a brand new sofa for our living room for Easter coming up. Do we agree? What's 90% of us going to do? Buy a sofa for $1,500 and go $500 in debt. That's what 90% of Americans do. The top 9% will go out and buy a sofa for $1,000 or less and live debt-free. But the millionaires, they do something different. So for myself, you guys ever see me? I like gum. Wherever you go, I got gum, mints. I just kind of like it. And what happens is I'm going to be smart, so I'm going to buy one of those bubble gum machines. You know those big red tall ones you see at the mall? They cost $750 brand new. I'll go ahead and buy bubble gum in bulk for 1 penny each with the other $2.50, and I'll fill it full. I'll take it over and put it into the mall. The kids will come by and put how much in? That's right, for a bubble gum that cost me how much? They'll trade me a quarter for a quarter for a quarter for a. Before you know it, I'll make well over $1,000 in pure profit. I'll buy that sofa and live debt-free. But the millionaires, they understand the simple action that they created themselves a machine that will continue to make them money month after month forever. That's it. The wealthiest people create their own bubblegum machine, whatever definition it is that you give to it. Pretty simple stuff, right? This little book I have nothing to do with, except I love it. It's called Embodiment. And the whole idea is it's the manual for becoming the best person possible you can be. Does anyone want this one? I don't have to walk too far. There you go. I like that. Now, this is one of my latest bestsellers. It's called Universal Wish, and the foreword was done by, you guys are all nonprofit people. You're going to like this one. The foreword was done by a guy named Frank Shankwitz. Frank Shankwitz, you do not know, but you do know the nonprofit he started. He's one of my closest, dearest friends who started a company called Make-A-Wish Foundation. In fact, I'm proud to say that I actually just got the rights to do his entire life story, and I'm making the first major motion picture in Hollywood in October based on this guy's life. It's absolutely stunning what this guy has done. I would have given it to you, but I like that action. Which leads me to my... Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, tomorrow we're going up to do an event. I'm speaking, it's 100,000 people coming into this thing. By the way, this is a great book that shows what she did. It's called Initiative. It's about getting off your butt and actually doing something. You know, I tell you what, and the big old but means I'd go do that, and we have all these excuses that keep in our way. It's having a big old but that will keep us from doing what we want to do in life. So many people have these thinking excuses that stop us. And what we want to do is have something called that moment. You know that moment where you have that, okay, there you go, that was a very quick one there. Now, that's kind of interesting. One of the people I had an opportunity to hang out with, you guys noticed that we did Mardi Gras just recently. It was with Fat Tuesday on Tuesday. What happened is I actually got a float inside Mardi Gras to throw out all the beads and whatnot. And I invited one of my dear friends who just got this book. It came out. His name is Brian Smith, and I threw out beads. He founded a company you might have heard of called UGG Boots. Now, it's so funny. He and I become really close friends, and I asked him, I says, how did UGG Boots come to become the great national treasure that it is? And he said it didn't start off that way. He said when he moved to Australia, from Australia, he was looking for a business to bring to the United States, and was common sense there no one ever heard of over here, such as sheepskin boots. And what happened is that he started investing money, and he was dialing it in all these magazine articles and all these different print ads, and no one was buying his boots. He was getting frustrated because he got all the hottest models, and he goes, why in the world are they not selling? Then one day he saw these 10-year-old kids coming out of a surf shop, and he opened it up to this hot model and said, hey guys, would you buy these? And they said, not a chance in the world. He goes, why? He says, look at that girl. She's not one of us. And right there he went, bing. He went out and hired the top surfers and skateboarders to start modeling those shoes, and it went from just an idea to $1 million brand by simply having one little action, by asking the community what it is that they want. One of the biggest challenges is that we want to sell stuff more than usually people want to buy it. And what we think is the greatest idea or concept, not everyone else might have that same feeling. What we might say is the greatest domain in the world, another person says, hey, that could use a little tweak. And we have to have that open mind to see the possibilities of what can be, so the possibilities become endless. Now, this little book is a cool little one. It's called Pendulum. The pendulum is this. Imagine like just on a little ball and string, everything goes back and forth, and it has a little time. Well, what happened is back in the late 60s and 70s, it was called a we generation, where everyone came together. Remember, make love, not war. And then in the 80s and 90s, it became a me generation. Everyone became greedy, self-serving. And then in the 2000s, it became a greed society, and everything self-imploded. Do we agree? Well, according to this pendulum, everything has swung back to the we generation. That's why you're in the right place at the right time. People are not following gurus anymore. You ever notice? They're following causes. They're following missions. They're following people that actually want to make a difference. You want your hand keeps going up on this one, but this literally is like a crystal ball in what's coming next. I recommend everyone get a copy of that. It's called The Pendulum. Now, for those of you who don't know a lot of my work, this is where I began. It all began with this book. It's called Think and Grow Rich. Raise your hand if you've ever heard of Napoleon Hill or Think and Grow Rich. Okay, cool. Now, this book here, now you keep your hand down for this one. This actually comes from the Napoleon Hill archives. This right here is a leather-bound collector's edition that nobody else has. This is like, I just told you, no. And so the thing about this is it's really cool is that when I started working on the Napoleon Hill Foundation, they told me a story behind the story. You see, Napoleon Hill, when he was 23 years old, he gained access to the richest guy of the world. His name was Andrew Carnegie. Now, Andrew Carnegie owned U.S. Steel Corporation. This is how rich this dude was. It's like, imagine putting Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, Oprah, and Branson together, all together in one place, in one room. He was richer than that. And the whole idea is this guy literally was the king of the world. And he took a liking to him, and it was supposed to be a 3-hour interview. It turns out to be 3 full days and 3 full nights. At the end of the interview, Carnegie goes to his guest and says, you know what, I kind of like you, and I'm going to give you an opportunity. He says, work for me for free for 20 years, and I'll send you on a mission to meet all my friends. You'll pick their brain, and you'll write the first ever formula for success called Think and Grow Rich. Napoleon Hill reached in his pocket and said, work for free for what? And thought about it, says, Mr. Carnegie, not only will I accept that mission, I'll actually complete it. Carnegie takes him by the hand and says, you not only got a job, you're going to actually complete it. And all of a sudden, Hill thinks to himself and says, gosh, how are people going to talk to me? I'm nobody. I'm not connected. And Carnegie says, that's easy. I'll write you a letter of recommendation. When they see it, they'll know I sent you. They'll give you all the time you want. Sat down with Edison, Einstein, Ford, Rockefellers, Alexander Graham Bell, picked their brains and created what we know now as the 20th best-selling book in the history of the world, the Bible of Personal Development. But here's what's cool. Carnegie was a stickler for action and gave his guest only 60 seconds to make up his mind. When Napoleon Hill walked out of the office, Carnegie pulled out a stopwatch. There was 31 seconds left. But what gets really cool is that Carnegie made that same offer to over 250 men before Napoleon Hill. He was the only person to accept it and say yes. Because everyone gets stuck with that stinking thinking, that bad case of the one side. They let that big butt stand in the way of success. And I realize it's the people that are willing to go all in and give it a shot that come out on top. Well, that was in 1908. You fast forward 100 years to 2008. The president family of the Napoleon Hill Foundation wrote that same letter that Carnegie wrote to Hill, and they gifted it to me. And they asked me to follow in his footsteps, and basically got the Willy Wonka magic golden kingdom pass, so to speak. So I have now access to the most powerful and influential people alive today. And that's how I got the opportunity to hang out with these people and become friends with them. Well, the first book that they asked me to do, which I don't think I've got a copy here, was called 3 Feet from Gold. And I got to tell you, 3 Feet from Gold is one of the coolest stories. It's the very first chapter of Think and Grow Rich. It's this guy named R.U. Darby gets gold fever. He goes out west and starts digging and discovers a couple nuggets. He hides it and buries it because he gets excited and goes home and tells his family. They chip in money to buy equipment to pull out by the truckload. The first ore cart comes out, woohoo! It's filled with gold. He kept digging, though, and the gold ran out. Kept digging, there was no more gold. Defeated, Darby walks out of that mine and says, I quit. He sees a junk man walking by, says, hey man, give me $200, I'm going to sell you this mine and all the equipment. I'm going home. Well, the junk man, realizing the equipment was worth thousands because the family chipped in, said, sure, you got a deal. Darby goes home a quitter. Well, the junk man goes to the engineer, says, what happened? He says, this guy hit gold and ran out, and the engineer starts laughing. He goes, everyone knows that's mining 101. Gold runs in a straight line. It's called a gold vein. What Darby did is he came in one side, hit the gold, and popped back into dirt. He goes, go back to where they discovered treasure, go 3 feet, 90 degrees, the opposite direction, you'll tap into the vein. Not only did he pull millions upon millions upon millions of dollars out of that mine, that's what fills Fort Knox today. And the moral is, how many times have we or someone we know quit one class short from a degree, or sales, or marketing, or marriage, or whatever it is? And it's the people that persevere and go that extra step, they're the ones you tell the stories about down the line. You can't quit before the miracle happens. The first person they asked me to interview, the Napoleon Hill Foundation, it's like a Mission Impossible thing falls on my lap, and they say, we want you to go meet this guy named Dave Liniger. Okay. I ended up sitting down with this gentleman and said, you want to get into real estate in 1970? What was it like? Did you want to quit? He goes, every day of my life. And he goes, for 2 years, every phone call that came in was from a bill collector. I was so embarrassed when the phone would ring, I had to run across the hall and pick it up so my secretary wasn't put on the spot. The 3rd year, they threw me in jail, calling me a fraud and a liar. I said, what'd you do? He says, I took my attitude from trying to prove you wrong to something more important, just prove myself right. He says, I knew I wasn't what you're calling me. He said, I had the courage to pick up the phone. I called every bill collector back and said, look, I'm going to be honest. All the money's gone. I don't got 50 grand I owe you. I do have $50. I'll send it to you with a promise I won't quit. Don't give up on me. He said, I called every collector every month until the 4th year. Someone finally believed in me, bought the first business called Remax Real Estate. He goes, I'm nothing. He goes, but how many people's lives were changed because I wouldn't quit? And how do we know that someone sitting in this room isn't about to give up on their own dream? Because Visa was calling them on the way in. From there, I got to sit down with the guy building the elevator to space, the Mrs. Fields cookies, from Miss America to the guy who started NASCAR. I got to go face to face with amazing people. Who here would like to have gone with me to meet all these people? No, you wouldn't. I invited hundreds and hundreds, and no one showed up. Hundreds upon hundreds, and no one showed up. Time off work, money, whatever story they told themselves, they couldn't do it. Now, remember how Napoleon Hill was never paid a penny to write Think and Grow Rich? Well, when the Napoleon Hill Foundation gave me this opportunity, they said it's very appropriate to pay you that same wage. I got nothing. I was the first guy in San Diego to short sell their house. I took my 2 Mercedes-Benz and I voluntarily repoed. I hawked my Rolex watch. I went all in. I says, I can always get stuff back. Will I ever have this opportunity? And for 3 years, I went on a journey with nothing but just a dream, so I could sit down with the greatest visionaries and pick their brains, which has now made me millions upon millions of dollars. And the moral is, so many times people get caught up on today's thing rather than rewarding their future self. And for myself, I go, I'm going to be kind to that future self. If I want to lose 10 pounds in a month, that means I got to put the Twinkie down today. If I want to have more money in the bank, that means I got to put $10 away today. And by being kind to that future self, amazing things happen. One of the interviews I did was a guy who, Ron Glosser, he had a company, it's called Hershey Chocolate, if you ever heard of that. And I said, tell me about it. I mean, what makes successful people more, lively, and how do they bounce back from other people? And here's his answer. He said, successful people never make their major life-changing decision while they're in a valley. I go, what do you mean? He goes, everything is cyclical. You have ups and you have downs. When you have a down, you get sick, laid off, you go bankrupt, you get divorced. How can you make a positive, life-changing decision? But everything goes up. So all you got to do is ride the storm till you have a little bit of an uprise, a little bit of giddy up in your step, a little bit of wind in your sail. He goes, if you can make a decision from that point of view when things start going your way, you'll save over 10 years of your life on this planet from having to go back and correct the wrong choices because you made them based at your lowest points. Brilliant. From there, I got to sit down with a gentleman that blew my mind. His name is John Schwartz. John Schwartz invented something called string theory. I don't know if you ever heard of that on science or Big Bang theory, but the concept is an atom is the smallest molecular structure till they cut it in half and made fission. He goes, something smaller is called a quark. What holds quarks together are these invisible strings that no one can see. It's called energy. And what happens if you're ever in a football game and everyone's applauding, you feel that energy. When I'm done and getting a standing ovation, right, you feel that energy. And the whole concept is that everything is one and interwoven. Well, for 10 years, everyone said he was crazy. He said if Albert Einstein couldn't figure this out, what makes some guy from Caltech Poly think he could pull it off? For 10 years, he was shunned in his own community. His family, his friends, his peers, they all said he was out of his mind. They said he was crazy, he was mad. For 10 years, everyone said he was a nut job until Michael Green proves his theory to be the most accurate, and now John Schwartz is considered the father, the inventor of what we know as string theory. I asked him, I said, why would you not quit for 10 years when everyone said you were wrong? I knew I was right. And he said, never let another person, especially yourself, talk you out of something you know to be true. And he gave the greatest line I ever heard. This changed my life. Most people, you got to wait to the end to get your big nugget. Here's your nugget. He said, successful people seek counsel and failures listen to opinion. Successful people seek counsel, failures listen to opinion. Here's the difference. Opinion is based on ignorance, lack of knowledge, inexperience. They've never done it, like your family, friends. Counsel is based on wisdom, knowledge, mentorship, someone who's already paved the way. If you go to a family friend and say, I'm going to start a nonprofit, they're going to say, you can't do that. Why not? I don't know, you just can't. That's their opinion. If you go to Frank Shankowitz, who started a Make-A-Wish Foundation, and say, I'm going to start a nonprofit, he's going to say, fantastic. Before you get started, here's what you need to know based on what? Counsel, wisdom, knowledge, mentorship. John Schwartz said, the day we start listening to other people's counsel and ignoring their opinions, that's the day your life will change. Pretty powerful. Remember this, we are a direct reflection of the 5 people we hang around the most. Our attitude, our income, and lifestyle is the exact average of that group. If you took a list of the 5 people you hang around the most and you added up how much money they make, I guarantee you make an average of that money. On the same thing of attitude, the same thing where you live, the same thing of a car you drive, the same thing of your status. The realities are we are our groups and associations. The moment we start changing those associations, that's the moment things start changing. If you always do what we've always done, we'll always have what we have right now. So the earliest thing I realized for myself when I wanted to be an author, I said, who's the greatest authors? I started hanging out with them. By doing so, here we are 50 some odd books later. When I wanted to be a public speaker, I didn't go to some new guy coming out of a Toastmasters. I said Zig Ziglar, Brian Tracy, Dennis Waitley, Charlie Trement. Who's the very best? They're the people I hung out with. I'm now making a major Hollywood film, and I said, well, who just won an Oscar? I'm going to go hang out with them. Who's the top people who do casting? I'm going to hang out with them. And by doing so, here we are putting it together. We're going to film in October. I'm not a rocket scientist. I believe in cheating the system by cutting to the front of the line. Literally, surround yourself with people who are already doing what you want to do. A couple years ago, my wife and I went to Africa, and we climbed and summited Mount Kilimanjaro. Now, I can't even do a sit-up, and I just climbed Africa. And here's the answer. I found the Sherpa that have climbed it 500, 600, 700 times. I didn't ask some surfer kid. I found the people who've already done it. Wherever they put their boot print, I put my boot print, because I knew they'd make it to the summit. And by surrounding myself with the people that are already doing what I want to do, I've got that record for myself. It applies to everything that we're doing. If everyone just hangs around with other people who haven't done it before, it's called pooled ignorance. We are the people we hang out with. After that book we did is this new one I just came out with here. It's a guy named Bob Proctor, and I did this book. It's called Thoughts Are Things. Now, Thoughts Are Things is a very cool... Hilliard, I think you got enough of these at the office, buddy. Now, the whole concept of Think and Grow Rich, the very first 3 words are, thoughts are things. So we went on a mission. We sat down with a Holocaust survivor that was interviewed for Schindler's List. We sat down with the guy who started JetBlue Airlines. We sat down with the mother of holistic medicine. We sat down with the founder of TED Talks, all these amazing people, and we said, how does your brain work? What do you think differently? The top neuroscientists, we wanted to know. You know what it came down to? Thoughts are not things. It's thoughts backed by massive action become things. If thoughts were things, I'd be a pizza because I'm starving right now, okay? So the reality is thoughts are not things. But as soon as I'm done here and I go to Luigi's on the way home and I get a slice of pizza, my thought became true because I took action behind the thing. It's the action behind the attraction that makes our dreams come true. You got to think it, you got to feel it, but ultimately you got to get off your backside and you've got to do it. When we did this book, there's amazing insights. I got to tell you this new one, though, I just came out with. It's called Stickability. It's about the power to persevere. And what we're talking about tonight. The first person I interviewed for this one, I was watching 60 Minutes, and I see this guy in there named Marty Cooper. Marty Cooper invented something that you use every day. Have you ever heard of a cellular phone? And I sat him down and said, Marty, what does stickability mean to you? And here's his answer. He goes, stickability has to be parallel with another word called flexibility. He said, if you're not willing to adapt and adjust, you'll end up being stuck. And he told a story about a spider monkey. He said, in the rainforest, a spider monkey is the most quick, nimble creature. You can't harpoon it, spear it, catch it. It's too wiry. One hunter figured it out. He took a heavy log, drilled a tiny hole, left it at the base of the jungle, and dropped a nut inside the hole. The monkey smelled it. Come down, reach his hand inside the hole, grab a hold of the nut, and his fist becomes so big he can't pull it back out. Becomes anchored to the log. Now, all he's got to do is let go, but he thinks that nut is saving him. Hunter comes by an hour later, captures the elusive spider monkey. Now, here's the big question. Are you holding on to your own nut right now? But it's in the form of a bad job or a relationship or fear, or that car, or that deal. And what we think is saving us, just like that monkey and the nut, could literally be leading to your own demise. Sometimes we have to have the courage to simply let go so we can live to fight another day. After that, I got to sit down with After that, we got to sit down with this amazing guy, Steve Wozniak. Now, Steve Wozniak started a company called Apple Computer with Jobs, as you know. Jobs was sold it, and Wozniak's the guy who actually made everything. And I asked him, I said, what made you and Steve so successful in life? And here's his answer. You're going to like this one. He says, we embraced what we did not have. We embraced our lack. I go, what do you mean? He goes, most people see a lack and they run from it out of fear. We stepped inside of it. He'll give me an example. He says, well, back in the day when microchips came out, the microprocessors, they were so expensive we could only afford one chip. He goes, I sold my Volkswagen Bug. Jobs sold his electric guitar, and we bought one of these chips. He goes, I took a Hewlett-Packard machine that would go from point A to point B with 20 of these chips, and I'd pull away 5, configure it to work. I'd pull away 5, get it to work. Till finally I went from point A to point B with our one chip. He goes, look, I wasn't trying to be cool or slick or unique. He goes, I could afford one chip. But by embracing that opportunity, I found the shortest, cleanest path and changed the way people will do personal computing for the rest of the world for the rest of their life. And he goes, where could you be if you start looking at what you think is a lack as an opportunity in disguise? After that, I got to sit down with amazing people. Who here would have gone with me to meet him? Anyone? Here's the deal. In November, 5 and 6 here in San Diego, I'm doing a conference called The Secret of Happiness. The concept is I decided to bring together my friends for everybody. I'm talking about the founder of Make-A-Wish is coming, the founder of UGG Boots. We got the guy who invented the credit card magnetic strip, some of the most incredible people on the planet coming into one place and one time to share their inspiration of what they did to inspire the world so that you can glean from it. We're doing a 2-day conference right here in San Diego. You're not going to believe this, for $97. And the reason that we're doing that is so that everyone can come and you have no BS excuse. If you don't sign up, you don't come, it's just because you're not ready, and that's cool. But don't kid yourself that you don't got it. Because the realities are we're looking for people that can step up to the plate and want to play the game. And well, imagine getting in a room with people that are the greatest trendsetters of today's generation and be able to gleam off them, not just walk them on stage, but hang out like I've been doing this entire time. Ron Klein, the guy who invented the credit cards there, and it's kind of interesting. I asked him, I said, how did that come to be? And he says, well, when you innovate, you got to see the end solution and not get caught up in all the minutia in the middle. He goes, it's like skiing. You're at the top of the hill and you want to get to the clubhouse. On the way down, there's moguls, black ice, trees. I already know that. He goes, I don't get caught up on the psyche of that. All I want to do is get down. When I fall, I just get back up because I know I'm getting down. He goes, most people would look at their problems like that rather than getting so caught up in this thing. That's why people quit. They fall down and they lick their wounds and they walk off the field. He goes, how can you make it down if you just quit? And I asked him, well, how did it come to be? He says, well, in Macy's department store, if you want to get some dishes, you checked out, they gave you a plastic card with raised numbers and letters. They'd check it against an accordion list of numbers, and if it wasn't on there, you had good credit. You put it in a machine, they'd scan it and go ka-chink, ka-chink. They take an imprint of it, and you left with good credit in your dishes. Because there's a way to put smarts and reel-to-reel tape were the cool thing. You took a piece of that, impregnated the number, put it on the back of the card, and it came up with a reading device. That's why when you put your card in, you have to get it that exact speed, because it has to mimic the reel-to-reel tape on the back of the card today. He also invented the multiple listing service for realtors and automated the New York Stock Exchange. Is that someone you might want to know? By the way, my partner Angel's in the back of the room in Hilliard. Here's the way we work. We are not going to chase you down. We are not going to send you an email. We're doing nothing. This is your only opportunity to come play with us. Hilliard's in the back with Frankie, his dog. For those people who want to sign up and come with us, you see them. If not, this is your shot to come. Now, by the way, what's that? Okay, you don't even know what it is yet. So this right here, I went in the back archives, and the Napoleon Hill Foundation gave me basically this key. And you go into this archives, and it's all Napoleon Hill stuff that no one's ever seen, stuff from before time. And I found these vintage home videos, and they're dusty, and I blasted them off, and it was W. Clement Stone and Napoleon Hill. And in their own voice, they talked about the 13 core principles of personal achievement. So I digitized it, and I made this radio show where I introduce Stone, who brings on Hill. They talk about the principle, and then I put a mastermind group of his grandson, the Napoleon Hill Foundation, all the people, from Bob Proctor, Les Brown, Brian Trey, all into one place. And they talk about how these principles stood the test of time. This is one of the coolest audio programs you'll ever get a hold of. Yeah, your hand's been going. You can have it there. So there you go. People always ask me, they go, why is it that you give out all your books? And the truth is, they just didn't sell so good. So here's the deal. most people always ask me, no, I can't give this one away. I'm sorry. I'm pretty clear on that one. I can't give this one away. I'm sorry. I'll kiss it so you think it's a sex book. All right, there you go. So the whole idea is this. When I don't know everyone in this room, but I do know this about you. I would guarantee that in your circle, in your sphere of influence, you are the person that everyone comes to for counsel. You are the person that's the smartest person in your group. That's why you're here. And the funny thing is, I know also you're just like that duck who looks cool on top and you're freaking out underneath the water. And that's normal, and that's the way we are. Our greatest success will always come just one step beyond our greatest setback. So when you want to quit and die, that's the time you kick it in the most. You know what's so funny? It's 2015, and I invite you to do something. You draw an imaginary line in the sand, and you step across and say, it's my turn. For years, I've been watching people that aren't as smart as me make more money. That ends today. It's time to draw a line in the sand and say, it's my turn. For years, I've been watching other people, and it's my turn to put me in the game. I've been putting everyone else's needs before my own. That stops now. It's a great quote by Les Brown. He says, you got to fill your own cup so full you can feed the world with what flows over. But until you become the greatest form of yourself, you cannot become the greatest form of yourself. I'm going to end with my favorite story. It was the greatest interview I ever did. He was a philosopher, a wordsmith, a poet. This guy had the words of an angel. His name, Evander Holyfield. You know the boxing guy? I didn't see it coming either. And I asked him, and I go, Evander, what makes you so special? He looks at me and says, I have a higher standard. You go, what do you mean? He goes, if you have a car and you won't tolerate it running bad, being dirty, you have a higher standard in a nicer car than your neighbor. In sports, I showed up early, I left late, I invented exercises, I had a higher standard, and I won more championships than anyone. I go, didn't it hurt being in a fight? He goes, God, yeah, it hurts. But when you're in a fight, you don't focus on the pain, you don't focus on the blows. As soon as you focus on the pain, you end up on your back knocked out. But that's what everyone does outside the ring. They focus on gas prices, war, economy, and they wonder why they never become a champion. And he pulled me in tight, this Adonis of a man. I'm looking up at this guy, missing half an ear, bitten off by Tyson. He looks down at me and says, you know what the funny thing is? He says, when you do win the championship, he says, everyone comes to their feet and they chant your name. They raise their hand in victory, and the guy puts a big shiny belt around your waist. At that moment, at that second, you don't feel even one of the punches you took along the journey. But the guy in the losing locker room will feel every bruise for the rest of their life, wishing they had a higher standard. The moral is right now, you draw a line in the sand and say, is it my turn to step across? You're going to come play with my friends, or are you going to keep playing with yours? And theirs are cool, but mine are cooler. Because you know why? They're doing the things that you want to do. And to get success, surround yourself with people that are getting the results you want. I'm putting them in a fishbowl for you. There is no excuse. It's November 5 and 6 right here in San Diego, $97. You see my boys. You draw a line in the sand and say, this is my turn. You go ahead and say, you know what, I've got an idea for that next invention, that next book, that next movie, that next inspiration. I'm not going to let other people take it from me, but more importantly, I will not take it to my grave. You draw a line in the sand and say, it's my turn to start experiencing, taking the first step to create a life of sustained abundance that other people have. You draw a line in the sand and say, it's my turn. I deserve this success. I paid my dues. Here I am standing. I've been through the form. I've been through all the fire. I've been through all the challenges. And more importantly, people still come to me because they think they got it on top. You draw a line in the sand and say, this is my turn, man. It's my turn to start living that life that I know I'm destined for. You got greatness inside of you. You got something so special, nobody knows it. Know why? Because you've been hiding it, because you're waiting for your time. This is your time. This is your time to draw that line in the sand and say, it is my turn. Put me in, coach. And when you want to say die and you want to throw in the towel, that's when you persevere the most. You literally could be just 3 feet from gold. I'm done. What's that? Oh. Thank you. There you go. There you go, swear. You keep it.
I keep it? No way.
It's a gift for you, absolutely.
Oh my God.
All right, there you go.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm putting it on eBay. Just kidding.
Hey.
I want to thank you so much, Greg. This was amazing, and you finished really early. So what I'd like to know is if anybody has any questions, especially surrounding his perseverance. I mean, isn't it amazing? His talk, it was very motivational, inspirational. It really makes me want to go out and say, it's my turn.
It is your turn.
I heard you.
And by the way, I got a new book that'll be coming out in this later on in this summer, and one of my co-authors is the one and only Linda right here with us. How cool is that? That's right.
Yes. Yes, but wait, hold on. I want to hold on. Okay. Sorry, I don't have any gifts for you, but I do have a book.
So does anyone have any questions
Yes,
for me? Yes. Ron Klein, K-L-E-I-N. Ron Klein. Yeah, Ron Klein. He's an amazing human being. He's just come up with this another invention that he's going to be talking about at the Secret of Happiness conference. Absolutely mindly, so that the blind people can start living a life without having had guidance. And the idea is he created this new type of thing with glasses with the camera built in, and what it does is hooks up to your iPhone, and what they can do is basically look at something and say, this is a yellow tie. He talks into this thing and says it's a yellow tie. A sticker gets printed on the back of it, so every time he goes in the closet, it picks up and the cell phone tells him that's a yellow tie, that's a blue tie, so that they can know their prescriptions, their drugs, all these different things. I mean, this guy is an amazing, he's 80 years old and he's still inventing to this day. Amazing human being, yeah.
Well, can I interrupt just 1 second? Michelle, of course, you're next. But I just want to say I need to hang out with Greg because I want somebody to bring me water, too, when I want it. No, just kidding. Go, Michelle.
No, but you can email me. Here it is. Write this down. It's Greg, G-R-E-G, at bookgreg.com. Greg at bookgreg.com. And my cellular phone is 858-353-0432. Now, everyone asks why I give it out, and here's the answer. No one will call me. They never do. It's the same thing. It'll be in your phone. 80% of everything you need is right within your sphere. You won't call. And it's so interesting, but that's what it is. Most people got to step up to the plate. Next question. Yes? Yeah, the question was one of the biggest challenges the Make-A-Wish Foundation had when it was forming, and it's lack of funds. It's the same for pretty much everybody. You know, when they did the first wish for Chris Gracious, it was amazing, and they got so much press and PR, but their money wasn't rolling in. Everyone wanted to help, but there just wasn't a lot of cash flow. So basically, this guy, Frank Shankowitz, worked as a highway patrol officer, did odd jobs, worked 3 different jobs just so he can, rub the nickels together to survive, to grant the first kid's wish. And it's so interesting because a lot of people think that you got to start this with a big nest egg, but this guy did it with absolutely nothing. For lunch, they were so broke, they'd literally, him and his other partner on the motorcycles would go through the national parks because chips were popular at the day, and the families would pull them over and give them free lunches like Yogi Bear. He said that that's how they survived. They did anything and everything to grant the kids and never took a dime from the Make-A-Wish Foundation, by the way. He just retired after 40 years of living a life of service as a homicide detective, and to this day never took a penny from the foundation. Pretty cool. Yes?
I hope you will film in San Diego or do some segments.
We are filming actually in Prescott, Arizona, where all this actually took place. The city of Arizona, Prescott, opened up the doors. They gave us access to all the buildings, the roadways, the things. You wouldn't believe it. So many people are coming to aid because they want to be part of this process. It's going to be like nothing you've ever seen. It's going to be fantastic. And we are going to hopefully film a few scenes, but it'll be on the Indian Barona reservation. Any other questions? Really? How much wood would a woodchuck chuck? If a woodchuck could chuck wood?
When did you,
Go ahead.
how old were you?
Wait,
I'm
she was
sorry.
going to say something. Go ahead.
Okay.
Oh, come on. You got to say it now. Well, that's a great question. What's my toughest challenge today? I'd say is creation of that next big thing, because now what happens is so many people come to me with their incredible ideas, and since I'm quite frankly very connected, doesn't mean I've done all these things. Just because I know the guys who did it doesn't mean I did it. However, a lot of people want those connections. So what happens is I got to be a filter, what makes sense so I can pass it on to my friends, and what to leave out. And sometimes I feel kind of bad about that, because who am I to make that judgment? I'm just a regular guy. It's kind of the same thing. When I sit down and interview these people, usually it's for 60 minutes to 90 minutes at a time. and then I'm only going to use 90 seconds of their interview. And I got to pick out the greatest nugget. Just because it made a great nugget for me, hopefully I didn't leave something on the cutting room floor that inspired somebody else. So there's a little bit of give and take with that. Anything else? Yeah.
So is there someone that you met and interviewed that didn't?
Is there someone that I've interviewed and didn't like? Yes, they did not make my book. Next question. There's a great quote I'm going to share with you guys. Never beg a person to give them compliment or money. Never beg a person to give them a compliment or money. So if I feel like I'm begging someone to put a spotlight on them, I will pass. That's kind of what it comes down to. At first, I did whatever I had to do. Sharon Lechter, it's so funny, when we did 3 Feet from Gold, the very first book in our process, I brought in Sharon Lechter, who wrote a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but Napoleon Hill was turned down for 15 years from every publisher in New York when he did his book. When I did my book, I was not turned down by every publisher. Most of them canceled their appointment and never met with me, right? And I didn't have that connection. Well, Sharon came on board and those doors opened, and when you publish a book, you want to get into the Barnes & Noble bookstore, the last one in the world. Well, we ended up closing the deal where Barnes & Noble actually published the books themselves, cut out the middleman, and did the first ever joint venture deal. So if you ever walk in the store, you'll always see my books. And the reason that came to be was one of the interviews was a guy named Jack Mates. You guys know him? You don't know Jack. So here's the deal. So Jack Mates, he founded a company called Velcro. You ever heard of that? Velcro USA? I said, how in the world did you sell 5 billion people Velcro? And he goes, we never did. We sold 5 people. You know what? He goes, we sold the head of automotive, the head of aerospace, the head of fashion. They found the application and they brought it to the world. He goes, stop trying to sell everyone out of your trunk. You corner a market and let them do all the heavy lifting. So by doing that, now all of a sudden we've got the biggest bookstore in the world being our biggest promoter. The same thing when we did the Napoleon Hill Road to Riches program. Amazon heard about that, and their sister company bought this as the first ever rights for an audio program sold through Amazon. So by having that opportunity, again, all of a sudden you got the greatest marketplace helping you pick up the lion's share.
And I listen to that CD every single day, and every day I pick up something different. Like, I listen to it so many times, but I still pick up something different every day, so
Yes.
enjoy it.
Some of your positivity comes from your family.
Did some of my positivity come from my family? Yes and no. I mean, the realities are I have a brother that I don't speak to because he says I'm too positive. He's true story. He's not really, he just doesn't understand, how it is. And on the same note, I'd say yes because, my mom is a very positive, upbeat person, which is great. I also believe it's how you look at life. Look, that's why I'm doing the Secret of Happiness conference. That's the whole concept of this thing. It's like going, man, I'm actually a happy person. You meet me outside here, I'm a happy guy. You know why? It beats the alternative. And that's it. I remember I was playing tennis against my tennis coach, and I kept talking smack. Here comes my A game. Watch out. Here comes Rocky. He pulls me up to the tennis court and goes, you got to put down that cocky attitude. He goes, a positive attitude is not going to win you games. The next day I went home and looked for a great quote. The next day I was on the tennis court and I was playing again. Here he comes, my A game. Here comes the theme to Rocky. He goes, come here, boy. He goes, I told you, positive attitude is not going to win results. He says, well, here's my rebuttal. A positive attitude will not get the desired result every time, but a negative one will. Next question. Yes. What am I reading today and what authors? I read a lot of the same stuff probably most business people do, Outliers, Blink, all those different ones. One book I recommend every human being read is called The Greatest Gift. Or The Ultimate Gift. The Ultimate Gift is by Jim Stovall, is an amazing book, and this guy lost his eyesight. He's in one of my books, featuring 3 Feet from Gold, and he wrote it from beginning to end without eyesight. And one of the coolest things about Jim Stovall is he also started a thing called narrative television. It's the only network for the blind. And you think, how do you have TV for the blind? What it does is it narrates what's happened. So if you're watching 2.5 Men, it says Charlie picks up a cup, walks over, and then he speaks. So actually someone's narrating what's happening. Amazing human beings. You wouldn't believe some of the neat people we've had a chance to meet. Just a heck of a journey. And my moral, what I was telling you, is that I'm doing a follow-up now with Sharon, and we're doing a book called Think and Grow Rich, The Magic Key, where we're interviewing everyone from the founder of GoDaddy and Intel and all these different things to find out what their secret sauce, so to speak, is. So I'm really excited about that. Any last questions? All right, my boys are in the back. Come play, and there you go. Thank you very much.
Okay, you guys, make sure you talk to Greg. Get some pictures with him.